Well, I'd like to welcome everyone to the June 2024 meeting of Portland Photographers Forum. I'm Bob Bergstrom, PPF President, and I'll be your host for tonight. Tonight is Members Night, so we have 3 members who will be speaking for 30 minutes each. Tonight we have Mark Toal, Dawn Kowalewski, and Mike Osborne. Tonight we also have a photo challenge slideshow. But first, I think we have a few announcements. Is Tim here? I think Tim wanted to make an announcement about Blue Sky. I don't know if I've seen Tim. I think this month in Blue Sky, this month and next month in the Blue Sky community drawer, we have Doug Rundle and Al Flory. And I think we only have 2 people for the rest of the year. So if anyone is interested, we do have several openings later in the year to participate in Blue Sky drawers. For those of you who may not know, PPF has a complimentary drawer in the Blue Sky gallery, and members can submit photos to be in the drawer as prints for 2 or 3 months at a time. Usually 2 members at a time. And I think we need people for August, September, October, November, later in the year. Usually they would like you to have 6 to 10 prints. And Tim Dallas has all the information about it. It's a nice opportunity to get your work shown. And Blue Sky is a photography gallery downtown in Portland. I think I didn't really have any other announcements. Does anyone have any announcements?
I've got a couple of things. I've got a big lateral file that I'm no longer using. And if somebody is needing a lateral file that I think it's about 40 inches wide, maybe 42 inches wide, and probably about 36 inches deep with 5 drawers. They're huge. And I've got that. And then also I had to retire my P800 printer. So I've got a bunch of unused inks. So if anybody has got a P800 and wants some free inks, just let me know.
Okay.
Be honest.
Thanks, Giannis. Anyone else? Any other announcements? Okay. Well, we'll go ahead and start with the photo challenge then for this month. Let me share my screen. And we should have music. So this month we had 31 people submit their photos. Thanks to everyone who submitted. This month's topic was geometry, texture, and architecture. We have about 170 slides to go through, including the nameplates. And so it's 7.5 seconds each. That brings us to 21 minutes. So, and will somebody yell at me if they don't hear the music? And here we go.
muted.
Well, thanks to everyone who participated. Next month, we will do summer fun. So anything related to the summer. So our first speaker tonight is Mark Toal. Mark is a newer member of PPF, but is not new to photography. So Mark, are you there? And do you want to unmute yourself?
Yeah, I should be unmuted. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, good. We can see you and hear you. So good.
Okay, should I share my screen?
Yes.
Okay, here we go.
Okay, good. And we can see your screen.
Can you see that? Can you see that okay?
Yeah, 100 years of photography.
Yeah. So, and you introduced me as saying I've been doing this for a long time. So the reason I say 100 years of photography is I feel I was kind of predestined to do photography. My grandfather worked for George Eastman starting just about 100 years ago. My family was all in Rochester. He worked on the film coating alley or lane, I think they called it. And he coated film for 25 or 30 years. And I always remember a George Eastman bust that he got for his retirement. So anyway, so that's why I say 100 years. I feel like I've been doing this. My father handed me a camera when I was about 10. I pretty much started doing this seriously, taking a lot of pictures and taking it seriously when I was about 12. So that was 60 years ago. So it was interesting, Bob, when you asked me to do this, I immediately said yes, because I do a lot of presentations for work, about photography and about cameras. And I thought, oh, this is no problem. And then I realized that I never do presentations about my photography. They're always about how this certain camera works or how you do time-lapse photography or something like that. And I kind of panicked because I don't feel like, like Bob said, I've been a member for, I think, about 6 months. And I watch the people do these, and I'm always admiring how everybody has a project seems too simple, but they have an idea of what they want to do. I remember Walter Oliver doing the ones about the graffiti, and somebody doing ones about the Indian dwellings in New Mexico. And I don't have that. I feel like my photography is just all over the place. In one of my talks, when I was doing in photography at a camera store, I was showing a few of my pictures, and one guy in the audience said, "How would you describe your photography? What are you, a street photographer, a nature photographer?" And before I could say anything, some guy in the back shouted out, he said, "He's an opportunist." And I think he's exactly right. I see myself that way. I feel like I stumble onto things. I don't go looking for things. I don't have a concept in mind. So anyway, so what I'm trying to say is this helped me kind of pull my ideas together that started during COVID, when I stopped traveling for work and I was home, and I started scanning negatives, and I started breaking my picture sort of into categories that at some point I hope to intend to make books out of. So the first of those categories is my early black and white photography. So these I started scanning for some reason, and I don't know how they made it. I've been carrying probably 10,000 negatives around the country for 60 years or 50 years.
I'm sorry, Mark, would you be able to make that a full screen? I think if you hit the green
No,
circle in the upper left.
Well, no, that actually is full screen. The picture, some of the other ones will be bigger. Yeah, but it's in PowerPoint, so the black and white is the background.
Yeah, and then we see
Oh.
your screensaver around the edges.
Oh, you do. Let me see if I can, like that.
In the upper left corner.
I'm sorry. I knew that.
There we go.
Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Sorry.
So anyway, I've been carrying these thousands and thousands of black and white negatives around the country, never thinking of what I was going to do with them, and I started scanning them during COVID. So this series is a book I'm putting together about the black and whites of pictures when I grew up in Miami, Florida. And what I used to do is my father bought me a camera, and he would buy me film. And while I would wait for him to get off work, he worked for the city of Miami Beach. I would wander Miami Beach and take candid pictures. And I was probably 15 or 16 when I took most of these. So this is Miami Beach as it looked before all the beautiful people got there. This was when Miami Beach was only populated pretty much by retired Jewish people from New Jersey and New York, who came down and basically dragged their chairs to the beach. The ocean is right behind me, and played cards all day long or listened to radios like this guy. And it was nice. And these days, nobody paid much attention to a kid with a camera walking around snapping pictures of them. I don't think you could get away with this anymore. So anyway, this is kind of where I learned to take quick photographs like this. Then I became the photographer for my high school, and the other photographer just couldn't seem to take any pictures, so I ended up doing everything. And they kind of let me have a free hand, and again gave me free film. So I started to, but as I scanned these pictures, I was just kind of amazed at them. I don't really remember. I remember the situations and things like that. This is my mother. She was one of my favorite models. She was actually a model. And so I love this headline on this thing: mobile homes, they're capturing the under $15,000 market. And so anyways, it took me a while during the first year of COVID of scanning these negatives to learn how to scan them quickly and get pretty sharp scans out of them. I'm still doing some retouching, as you can see up in the corner up there. Again, I learned to shoot very, very quickly. This was a department store I worked in. I was I've spent my whole life working in something to do with photography or cameras. And so this was my first job as the manager of the camera department in a department store, when the department stores used to have camera departments. And I wanted to be kind of inconspicuous. I never felt like I felt uncomfortable asking people to pose for me. So, and people somehow would just feel very comfortable in front of me. And so This guy's not shooting. He's actually a gun salesman, and he's just like, playing with the guns. It was a slow night at work. So a lot of street photography. This was my favorite thing to do, and probably still is. Again, walking the streets of Miami, it looks like I'm close to these people, but my favorite combination was a 35 millimeter camera with a Vivitar 135 millimeter lens. So I was a little bit away from these people, and learned to develop the film myself and did all that, and was kind of on my way to becoming a photographer. This is one of my favorites. What would you do in Miami if you wanted to keep your dog? You'd put their leash on your car antenna. Something you just can't do anymore. I figured this must have been winter in Miami Beach, or that car would have been 1,000 degrees. But it's been interesting because I've posted a lot of these on a Miami Beach Facebook site, and a lot of them want me to put a book together. And so these are just some of the samples that'll be from this black and white Miami book. And again, it's been fun to look back and see how my style and composition and everything has kind of stayed the same over the years. In Western, so the next thing I sort of fell in love with was Western cowboy photography. And April, who's the woman on the right there, she's what kind of got me started with this. This was at a rodeo in Pescadero, California. And it's interesting because you see behind her there's a bunch of things on the hill. That's the parking lot of all the cars. So in Photoshop, I kind of blurred that out. But I sent this picture to April. She was 18 at the time, and she lived near where my wife and I lived. And I sent her a copy of this picture. And she wrote me the sweetest note, like a 12-year-old would, of this is the most special thing I've ever had in my life. She drew a heart and then signed her name at the bottom. And so I had to get to know her. So I got to know her and her family. And these chaps are her husband, Paul. I shot their wedding. I shot their cowboy wedding. And I just fell in love with Western photography. I fell in love with everything to do with just the look of the saddle, the jeans, just everything about this. And so again, in the chaps are just in the barn at their house. And again, this is April. This is April she's the second one from the right. This is when she and Paul were moving away. And she wanted me to take a picture of she and all of her cowgirl friends together. And this was great. It was in Half Moon Bay, California, where they were cowboys. And the sun was just setting. This was a beautiful sunset evening. So anyway, so April's been a big sort of part of my life. This is her about 5 years ago. Trying to remember where this was. This is somewhere down in it's in Northern California near the Oregon border. And she and her husband manage ranches. This is her second husband now, but they both manage ranches. And April just loves to pose and have me come down and wherever she is and take her picture. And so anyways, I just, again, fell in love with that, and then followed up with that by starting to shoot more rodeos and things like that. I mainly shoot the St. Paul rodeo in St. Paul, Oregon, just south of here. Obviously, everybody probably knows where St. Paul is. And what I try to do is in a lot of my pictures that you've seen so far, I try to capture something that you don't normally see. I'm in Miami Beach, and I don't want to shoot the ocean. I don't want to shoot palm trees. I want to shoot these people. Same thing with rodeos. I shoot the activity where the guys are roping the horses and roping the bulls and things like that. But those aren't the pictures I usually show. I love ones that capture the flavor like this, of this incredibly confident looking cowboy in green. And what they do here, just so you know, is the reason that horses stop. So what they do is they come out, the rope is attached to a cow at the end of it. And so he comes riding out and he makes that horse just stop dead, which is why all the rocks are kicked up there. And then he keeps the rope in his belt like that, so it'll unfurl as he walks away. But I just love the looks of the cowboys in the back, of just and there's also, it kind of shows even after so many years, there are very, very few black cowboys in the rodeo. But I just love the look on their face, and just that super confident look on his face, like he just knows exactly what he's doing, stepping off that horse that's just stopped from a full run. And again, this is again at the St. Paul Rodeo. And I love this because I was walking around the stands. So if anybody is is interested in taking rodeo pictures, I don't go to the actual rodeo. I go to something called Slack. And if you don't know what Slack is, it's the best part of a rodeo if you're a photographer, because if you go to the rodeo at night, it's not only crowded, that in the past few years they've set up security. They don't want you to go into the more expensive seats where you might get the better pictures. They try to keep you in a certain area. 20 or 30 years ago when I started doing it, you could wander everywhere around the rodeo. You could go back where the horses and the cowboys were and talk to them. And so Slack takes place like in St. Paul. It takes place the first 2 days of the rodeo, and it takes place at 9 o'clock in the morning. And it's the cowboys. I wouldn't say it's the cowboys who didn't make the cut, but it's cowboys who are trying to qualify for that evening rodeo. They're not necessarily professionals. Maybe some of them aren't that good at it, but there's nobody there and it's free. And the lighting is beautiful at 9 o'clock in the morning. But anyways, you can wander around the stands. And I was wandering around, there's probably only maybe 50 people in the whole arena. And I just was listening to these two guys talk about how many years they've been coming to the rodeo and talking about the different cowboys. And it just felt to me like sort of like a Norman Rockwell. Just these two old guys just talking away and just enjoying and reminiscing about everything. So again, I try to capture something that you don't normally see. Or if you think you're going to go to a rodeo, the first thing you think of is getting that picture of the guy. Oh, especially the one where the guy is being flipped off the bull and he's upside down. Everybody gets that picture. It's like going to Paris and taking the Eiffel Tower. And so I try to get something that's a little different. Yeah. Again, I'm shooting with a really long lens here. So these guys, the neat thing about Slack is, so normally at the rodeo, they open up the gate and the guy, the horse comes out and you don't see any other cowboys. But here, the cowboys ride around the ring as the rodeo is taking place. It's very, very casual. So as these guys come up and they're sitting on their horses, I'm using the equivalent of an 800mm lens here to zoom in on this guy. But I can just get these great pictures, I think, of the way these guys look. Just the ropes, the hands, the shirts they wear. I find it interesting to see how they've changed. I do a lot of black and white in the rodeos because for some reason in the past few years they've gotten into wearing really bright color shirts, and the ropes now are turquoise and pink and red, and to me it just doesn't make a rodeo. In fact, when I was shooting this one, there was a guy I was trying to shoot, and he rode up on his horse and he reached back into his saddlebag, and I thought, oh, this is going to be a great picture. This is just going to be like an old Western picture. And he pulls his iPad out of his saddlebag and he starts surfing the web. So anyways, that's a lot. So the next thing, so then my other interest. So I kind of got into the Western stuff accidentally through April, leading me into it. I didn't go to look at it. I didn't go to see rodeos. I had nothing in mind like that. Same thing happened to me with steam trains. So this is the famous steam train that's down at the museum in Portland. About when I first moved here in around 2010, another meetup group I belonged to set up a meetup at the old roundhouse, which was where was it? It was anyways, it was a phenomenal old building that housed the trains that had been there for like 100 years, all the tools and the guys working in it. And I took some pictures. And again, I never sort of intended on going back or anything, but I'm kind of old fashioned. I took one of the pictures and I made a nice image out of it. And I emailed it to the guy who was their photographer. And I said, well, thank you for showing us around. It was wonderful to shoot the trains. And he wrote back and he said, gee, I really like your picture. I'm retiring. Would you like to be the photographer for the steam train? And to me, that was just like pure heaven. So they would let me have access extremely close, anywhere around these steam trains. And whenever they were working on them, they would invite me down to the roundhouse and now to the well, I stopped doing it during before COVID, down to the engine house downtown that's by OMSI down there. But anyway, so they would let me just stand as close to the train as possible. In fact, one time I was photographing the train at Oaks Park. They do the Holiday Express. And I was standing, taking pictures of it. And I always love this. I asked the guy, I said, so when is the train leaving? And he looked at me and he goes, trains don't leave. He goes, trains depart. And I love people who have jargon like that. We as photographers do too. But anyway, so I was standing next to the train, and all of a sudden the train starts to depart. And I'm just engulfed in steam and oil and water. The steam that you're seeing, it's not this picture, but the steam that you're seeing come out here at the bottom of the train hits me in the knees and almost knocks me over. And so when the train leaves or departs, I turned to the guy and I said, "Why didn't you tell me it was leaving?" And he said, "You've been here, you know what to do." And so I felt like I was part of the group. In fact, the photographer who was retiring, he told me the day they'll accept you, they're very kind of a very gruff group of guys. They don't talk much. They're kind of like cowboys. They don't talk much. They just work on the train. And the guy said the day that they accept you is the day that they let you ride in the cab. And sure enough, at Oaks Park one day, I was just shooting pictures, and just out of the blue, the guy's steaming the train up, and he goes, "You want to ride in the cab? Get in." And that was after that they called me by my name and and treated me differently. So anyways, this is just a picture of it leaving when the train used to actually go out on runs. This is it leaving the train station in downtown Portland. This was a cool thing. This is the other train that's down there, the SPNS 700. And this was there's a company called Liro Productions. I don't know if anybody knows about them, but Peter Liro lives in Pennsylvania, and he's a guy who arranges tours, photo tours. So he'll get a group of photographers and bring them to a city to shoot the trains, or he'll shoot military reenactments. So they had set up they had hired the train, the engine, for I think $5,000 to steam up and run back and forth on the tracks and blow out steam like this, which they're not allowed to do normally because it's extremely polluting, but they did it for the photographers. So I signed up to be a security guard that night, or not security guard, but sort of security to keep other people who hadn't paid from coming in, and got to take pictures. So it just got me a lot of good access to the train. This is this is their newest train, not newest, this is their newest old train that they started running for the Holiday Express last year. And anyways, this guy, he found this picture online and just loved it, and bought a copy from me and made a puzzle out of it. Again, this is one of the setup pictures where the guy brings in these big lights. It's sort of like a Winston Link. And anyways, this is all a setup picture. And then this one was interesting. I took a picture of the controls in the cab of the train, the 700. And then they had to do what's called a 15-year inspection on it, where they had to take all of this off. They have to disassemble the train and have it inspected to make sure it doesn't explode when they take it out in public. And they put all the words on it. I took the picture, and they were selling this in the gift shop. They sold a lot of these in the gift shop. But then one day I went down, and they were putting the train back together after 5 years. And this picture was propped up in the middle there on where the fire goes. And I asked the guy, I said, "What's my picture doing there?" And he goes, "That's the only way we know how to put it back together." So it felt like kind of an honor. So the last subject I do in book I'm trying to put together is Americana. A lot of people, probably more people, think of me as an Americana type photographer. This is at the Tigard Balloon Festival. And again, I'm trying not to get that standard picture of the Snoopy balloon blowing up in the sky. I take all those, but I'm trying to get something different that shows that kind of captures the feeling of where I am, not the look of where I am, not the exact, like not the Eiffel Tower, but the feeling of what it feels like to be there. Drag races. So I went to the drag races thinking this would be great to shoot, but if you've ever been to the drag races, they love color. This motorcycle could have been yellow, and the truck behind it could have been red, and the guys are wearing bright colored outfits, and it just looked like a snapshot. So I started, I think this might even be infrared if I remember right. But anyways, I love just going to things like this, to festivals, to rodeos. Any summer is my time. This guy, I'm going to Virginia City. I'm going to Reno for a camera event on Thursday of this week, and I'm going up to Virginia City where I met this guy. And so he came along, and he was doing this for a living. And so I asked if I could take his picture, and he's like, "Yeah, this is what I do." So that's my dollar in his hand. And I took a couple of pictures, and I said, "Can I take another one?" And he goes, "Yeah, that'll be another $1." And so I actually tipped him, which is a lesson I never learned. You never give somebody like this $5. I thought, "Oh, this is so great. I'm going to give you $5." Every time I came out of a store or restaurant, he and the donkey were there. He's like, want another picture? I'm like, no, I think I got enough. But anyways, I just love the look. I heard he died just a couple of years ago. But I talked to him for a while and he told me that he had a normal job and he retired. And this is what he wanted to do, was just to walk around a tourist town and pay to have his, get paid to have his picture taken. This is a guy I met. I can't remember his name, Chief, got something or other. I met him out in McDermott, Nevada. And he works with veterans who have PTSD and brings them out there for Native American ceremonies. And he sells all of this stuff around them. And I'm just in pure heaven when I meet a person like this and sit down and talk to them. And first you're kind of put off by them, wondering if this is somebody you want to talk to. And it turns out he went to school in Beaverton and but he got PTSD in the service and now tries to return it. But I don't know if you've been in McDermott, Nevada. It's in the middle of nowhere. Las Vegas, you get up early enough, people are still naked. So I like to get up very, very early in Vegas. The light is beautiful. So I'm almost through here. So one of the things I'm doing now, and this is one of the more popular things I do on Facebook, and I've decided in my life, because I'm old enough, I don't want to buy any more things. I don't need any more things in the house, that I would photograph things that I might want, and that would satisfy the urge. So I started something called Photograph It, Don't Buy It, and Photograph It, Don't Eat It. And people just love this. Every time I put up something like a foot-long cookie like this, people go, oh, I need that, So anyways, that's kind of one of my new, this isn't going to, well, maybe it'll be a book. I don't know. Playing around with artificial intelligence. And I do label all these when I put them on Facebook or Instagram, but I love this one because this is at the top of the Space Needle and there's no lightning out there. Lightning doesn't strike, like that in Seattle. And somebody wrote, they didn't read that this was an artificial intelligence picture. And they wrote and they said, why isn't everybody else looking at the lightning? I said, because it's not real. But I thought it was amazing what you can do just by selecting that area of the picture and saying add lightning. These are some other ones I've been playing with. This is up at Mount Tabor. Both of these are at Mount Tabor. The one on the right, the dog is not real in there. The dog was invented by Photoshop. Same thing with the helicopter and the serpent and the other one. I'm not very comfortable with it, but I'm finding it's trying to just see what this could do for my photography. So I think my time's just about up. I appreciate everybody listening.
Yeah, Mark, you have 5 minutes. I don't know if you want to take any questions.
Yeah, I'll stop and take questions. This is my last slide anyway. So this is a picture I took on a trip with my friend Jeff, who was a painter. And this is out in the middle of Nevada, and we're in what was supposed to be a development. We're at the corner of Sunset and Vine, of a housing development that was never made. So anyways, thank you all for listening and giving me the opportunity to try to figure out what kind of photographs I take.
Oh, those were great. Thanks so much, Mark. Does anybody have questions for Mark?
I have something, not a question, just I've always been a fan of your work, Mark. It was great to see some of the different genres and projects you're working on. Look forward to seeing the books.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I've been playing around with sending them in for test prints and things like that, trying to find out who the best company to do this is. So yeah, thanks.
Mark, I have a thank you. I loved your work, and I love the photos of the people, the April and the veteran. And do you tend to give people direction, or does it depend on the situation?
It depends. I tend not to. The only there's probably a couple of them in there that were the early ones, the black and whites I did a lot because I was in high school and I had to be the photographer. But the only one probably in there was the one of April and her husband where there was a horse with them. And we were doing a photo shoot. They were dressing for me and everything. But no, most of them are like her on the horse. I did the one of the 7 women together, and that was obviously posed. We did a lot of pictures. And a small anecdote about that. My favorite thing about that picture was they all posed for me like that. And then they said, we want one more picture. We want to turn around and have you take a picture from the back. And I'm like, how many women want to have their picture taken from the back? And it's a thing about Western women. They want to show off their jeans because they all wear Wranglers. And so I'm like, okay.
That's great.
No, I tend not to pose. I got into photography a lot because I was a shy kid, and it gave me an excuse to go places and shoot things. So I learned to shoot by being very quick and not being noticed. And I've
Yeah.
just sort of always kind of done that. So
Well, thank you.
yeah, thanks for asking.
Great. I think we have time for one more question.
Mark, Mike Osborne here.
Oh, hi.
Nice to finally meet you.
You too.
You probably won't remember this, but you were the first local person I met when I moved to the Portland area,
Oh, really?
2013.
Wow.
My buddy Robert Eckhart was visiting you,
Oh, really?
and I came over and had lunch with you guys.
Oh, you did.
So, welcome to PPF finally.
Oh, thank you very much. And I don't mean we won't go off on it. I can contact you, but is Robert still around?
He's still down in Half Moon Bay.
Oh, good. Okay, I'll get in touch with you and see, but I haven't heard from him in years. Oh, it's nice. Okay, thanks for the reminder.
Okay.
Okay, I'll stop sharing now.
Okay, I think we maybe have time for
Oh.
one short question, if anybody has another question. Otherwise, thanks so much, Mark, and really appreciate that.
Sure. Let me.
Okay, I think I did stop your sharing, so I
Oh,
think
good.
we're
Okay.
okay.
Yeah, because I don't see the button anymore.
Our next speaker is Don Kowalewski. Don, are you there?
I'm here, right here. Thank you so much for having me. That's going to be a tough act to follow, Mark. Your pictures are just wonderful. So mine's going to be a little bit more about how I do what I do, which is macro and focus stacking. So I learned today my presentation is on Keynote. So I learned today how to have my presentation notes so you can't see them, but you see the screen. So we're going to do this, but it's going to take me just a second to set this up. So you hit the advanced portion of the screen, and you've got this nice little green thing that you put here, slideshow. So this
Looks perfect.
Only see the words color and bloom, correct?
Correct. We see color and bloom.
Excellent.
And
So this is working the way it needs to. It's great because I can see timers and I've got the next slide, and this is a fantastic way to do it. Anyway, so why macro and why focus stacking? I love that it's very intentional work and it's very creative. Blurry images just don't do it for me. I focus stack to achieve the sharpness throughout my entire subject. Focus stacking is a process of taking numerous images from back to front of your subject 1 millimeter at a time and then combining them into one sharp image. The area of focus in close-up photography amounts to one sliver. So unless you're going for that dreamy feel, focus stacking is the answer to sharpness. I love coming up with an idea, and the end result is always unexpected. I believe I make my images loud with color because I am deaf, and it feels very powerful to me. So now I'm going to show you some of my past work for context. In 2009, my sister-in-law handed me a Nikon D40 and asked me to shoot her wedding that morning. I had no idea even how to work a camera. I had so much fun that I decided to go ahead and learn how to be a wedding photographer. This is one of the images that I took. I found it a couple of days ago while looking for an image. It was funny, but the pictures were not that sharp, and I'd cut off feet, and I didn't even know it at the time, but looking back on them, I could see how actually bad they really were. These are things that you learn the hard way, and the lesson is do not ask your relatives to shoot your wedding. I started doing everything: weddings, babies, families, pets, headshots, events, photo booth, real estate, street, boudoir, seniors, beauty, and even ghosts. I joined PMPA, which is now OPPA in Portland, and served on the board for 3 years. I entered my first print competition, and this image is called Laundry Day in Krakow. I scored a 92, and I was told that was the highest score anyone had gotten at that time. It went downhill from there for a while, but I learned a whole lot from that process, entering competitions constantly. Babies, And pets are very similar. They have a limit as to how long they will cooperate, and sometimes not at all. After shooting wetties and babies, and I kind of was done with that, kids sticking their tongue out at you, things like that. It just is not as much fun. I decided to concentrate on boudoir, which was a lot of fun. Everyone had different ideas. This gal brought her boyfriend's vintage car, and another one actually brought her boyfriend's kayak to the studio. So everybody has a different idea about how they want to be seen. I dipped my toes in beauty portraits. And finally, high school seniors. One of my favorites. The kids were always so willing to do whatever I wanted them to. Boys were slightly reserved, but I could make them laugh. And they always said that it was way more fun than they thought it would be. I really enjoyed it a lot. I don't get around to street photography too often, but I love taking pictures of people on the street. This was shot in London when everyone was going home from work. I love this lady's dress, her hair, and her purse. It looks like she stepped out of the past. It was also World Cup final, so everyone was partying up in London. I love this picture. She has cash in her hand and she gives him a kiss. Pride was going on also, so it was just a party all week long. This is some animal activists in the square. This is a couple of gentlemen that were in Krakow. I find that men in groups of two will almost say yes to a photograph, and so it makes it a lot of fun. They always have fun doing it. This is a couple that I took a picture of in Krakow. This guy posed for me, and I love how his dog is laying across his legs. I don't know how he's sitting like that long anyway. And I love that this guy's counting out money to give to the Statue of Liberty. So I thought it was quite funny. Here's a couple more guys just sitting on the steps in Portland, and you can almost by looking at it tell that this is actually taken in Portland. It has that Portlandia feel about it. They were really nice. This was taken one morning in Mexico. I like the peacefulness of it. This little boy was cooling this dog off with water from inside the boat, and the dog left right after he did that to him. Here's another couple of gentlemen. They look pretty stoic sitting there, but they really weren't. They were having a good time. And then finally, this woman was smiling at me so sweetly. She was selling sodas on the other side of the building. So let's dig into some of this macro work. After losing most of my hearing, I quit doing client-based work and decided just to make photographic art. I watched a curator's webinar, and she said, if you're going to put yourself out there, enter competitions, show in galleries, and even talk publicly about it, you need to be an expert at what you do. You can't be great at something if you're doing everything. So I honed in on macro work exclusively for a few years, and it paid off. I shoot with a Leica M11. I have a 35, a 50, and a 135 that I use with a macro adapter. If you want to shoot something that's really small, or you want to get into the nitty-gritty, you would choose a 35 millimeter or wider. And if your subject is bigger, then I use a longer lens to get more of the subject in it. And the plane of focus is actually a little wider too, but I still take a bunch of pictures in focus stacking anyway. I use a Peak Design travel tripod. It's easy to set up, has an upside down feature. It's lightweight but sturdy. It flattens out. It works great for my needs in the studio. I do not go out in the field very often because the environmental factors make it difficult to focus stack. Wind blowing, sunlight problems. I used this focusing rack. This goes on the tripod, and the camera is attached on top. Then you advance the camera 1 millimeter at a time after you take your shot. It has precision and smooth advancing. This was one of my best investments. I have done focus stacking of up to 109 images. So it's a nice gadget that makes things run a little smoother. This cost about $262 and it was worth it. I was using this one for a long time and it worked well. It's only $16 on Amazon, but it's just not quite as great as a NovoFlex. So you don't have to spend a lot of money. I used fixed lighting because any light variances will mess with the focus stacking software. This is a really nice light, but it's a little bit too big. These are some of the tools I use to hold my subject. I have clips and then a ring light for interesting water drops, syringes and eyedroppers along with a spray bottle. I use digital backgrounds by Stuart Wood. The set includes 4x6 and paper size images. So I just print them on matte photo paper so you don't have any shine in your background. These only cost about $12 for a whole set and it has several. This is my typical setup. I have the camera in the front, the flower is clipped in, I've got my background there and I have all my tools ready to go. I also have a gray painted canvas if I'm going to experiment with textures, or I could use black and white to completely replace the background in my processing. Use the color backgrounds if I know I'm going to stick with that background. And then I use a constant light depending on what's going on, if the light outside. Or I'm shooting intentionally to get water drops, which creates great refraction, which I'll show you in a bit. So I make a day of the process. I get all the gear ready. I have a plan to make many variations and backgrounds and flowers. I certainly don't want to set this up for one little day because it takes a long time to dig through all that stuff. I come up with new ideas as I play around with the materials. When getting ready for my shot, I make sure the flower is not leaning forward or back to reduce the surface area that I need to shoot. I stand to the side and look for the closest part of the flower to the lens and the farthest part. That way I know when to start and when to stop. I do not spray water until I'm ready, absolutely ready to shoot. Water evaporates and it drips off. Sometimes if your flower is really delicate, it will just get mushy. And when I do spray, I use a very fine mist and you just keep spraying and your drops will get bigger and bigger. And then after that, I'll use a syringe and inject some of the big ones to make them even bigger. And then they fall off and then you have to start over. I use Lightroom to lower highlights, boost the shadows and texture, and add a bit of contrast to help the program to see the differences and the edges. It just makes it easier. I move them into Helicon Focus software to compress them. After processing, I go to Photoshop to inspect the image for cleanup, cropping, and replace backgrounds. Then I move into On1 for dynamic contrast, sunshine, color grading, textures, and vignette. So I do this process every single time. Helicon Focus is a Ukrainian company. The premium package is $65 for 1 year license, so it's really inexpensive. You don't have to use that. You could use Photoshop. You would load your images into a stack, click Auto Align Layers, then Auto Blend Layers, and under the Edit tab, it's a really long process, and it's not nearly as good as Helicon Focus, but you can get away with it. This is a raw image taken from my hellebore stack. You can see the plane of focus here. And I use the same settings always, f8, ISO 100. I really don't want to have a super slow shutter speed. I also underexpose by 1/2 to 1 stop because I would rather bring up shadows than try to fix blown highlights, which happens often with water drops and white portions of a flower. This is a video of the hellebore stack. So I'm going to show you how it processed 67 images. In real time, this took 3 minutes, but I did reduce it to 25 seconds, so you didn't have to sit through this whole thing. The images are loaded on the right-hand side, and it goes through each one down and back, picking out all the sharp points. And there it is. That was nearly a perfect stack, and I was quite happy with that. So what I would, after I have the final result, I move it into Photoshop along with the JPEG of this background I used. I blur the background image, and I also use a healing brush to do cleanup and repair some of the blurry portions. Blemishes are natural to plants, but I don't want them to be in the image, like stray pollen, dirt, dried material, and bugs. And I don't usually seal the bugs until I'm absolutely finished. And you can, if you go through all the images, you can see them walking around the flower. Sometimes it messes the program up, sometimes it doesn't. And then I take it into On1 for final processing, and I will show you that in a brief demonstration. This is the end result after my editing of this flower. I have this in a 60 by 40 metal print in my entryway, and it looks amazing. In fact, a lot of the pictures you're seeing today, 15 of them are on my walls in large metal prints. Not that big, but 24 by 36. This is from my bleeding heart bush, taken with a 50 millimeter. It was a 12 image stack. It's very small, it's only about 1 inch long, and it's very thin, and there are no fuzzies on it, so it was going to process super easy. The challenge, though, is bleeding hearts do not like water. So I started spraying water on it. It was literally flying off. I mean, flying. It would have made a really cool picture to show those flying. So to solve that, I went down in the garage and got some rain nets that you put on your windshield. And that seemed to help stick some on there, but it was a huge effort to get that many on there. So I want to show you how I process from start to finish. I did it in a video because I couldn't do it live with this being on the screen like this. So this is back in Helicon. I have 12 images here on the right, and it's going to pull all the sharp portions out and compress the image. And I just love watching it happen. So I'm looking and making sure all my images are there. I hit render, and it really only took a few seconds to put this together. And there it is. It's absolutely perfect. If there are any resulting errors, like there's some banding here, you can go to the retouch button and your source image is perfect over here. So then you can just erase it back, and it takes care of that problem. I could use any one of these images over here, whatever you need to fix. I just couldn't demonstrate something to fix on this one in particular. I wouldn't normally do that because I do replace the background. Here's the background I used, and I put a Gaussian blur on it in Photoshop. Then I go over here and I start looking for things to take out, any kind of material or whatever. But my water drops here are most important in that you can see my photograph background in it. So what I'm going to do is get a background copy, and I'm going to clone that out, and there it looks a whole lot better. And then I'm going to select my image and put it on the background. So now I have a perfect background with my image, and it looks, I think, just looks really super good. This one, it's just really easy to do. So I'm going to go into On1 and make a few edits. And so there are filters in On1. And so the first one I use is dynamic contrast, which uses adds some clarity and contrast I don't use it at 100% because it could be really too sharp and crazy. And then I go to sunshine to add some light. Then I go to LUTs for color grading and saturation. In this case, I just saturated it a little bit. I didn't need to change, I didn't want to change any colors of it. And then you can use your opacity slider to get it just right where you want it. This was really super fast. Usually it takes me 2 to 3 hours per flower to clean up and experiment with different textures and colors and things. Okay, refraction. Water drops refract the background. So we have a blue on the right and yellow on the left, but in the drops, the colors are opposite, blue on the left and yellow on the right. So it really makes a great photograph when if you intentionally want to add great big drops. And this one has great big drops. So this was a great one to demonstrate the refraction. I won Best in Show in an online gallery competition, and my announcing the award on Facebook is what got me a show at the Leica Bellevue store. So that was pretty exciting. It probably helped to be a good customer too. Probably more like that. Okay, I discovered this wall-ale columbine growing in my garden in late winter, and they're really super small. I thought it was just amazing. Water attracts to it like crazy. There's hundreds of bubbles on there, and because it's such a sturdy little thing, it didn't get mushy. So this is, I call this Prince of Columbines because I think he looks rather royal. This is a 39 image stack. I added clouds in the background because I shot this a little lower, so I thought maybe it was like looking up to the sky, and I think it has a lovely afternoon, daytime feel to it. And I love pink and yellow, orange. The colors are just amazing to me. This is 25 image stack. This is a tulip that I shot on a blue background, and I thought it was pretty boring when I was done, so I almost tossed it. Then I thought, well, what if I add a texture? So I found a woodsy texture that looked like it had raindrops in it, and that gave it more story and more depth. So I really started playing around with my backgrounds more. I accidentally broke the stem off this begonia, so I laid it flat and shot it downward. This is a 15 image stack using a 35 millimeter. I chose a similar background and color to make it more monochrome. And it just is, just beautiful. These are 3 separate calla lilies placed on a background in Photoshop. It's difficult to shoot more than one subject in focus stacking and have it turn out well. There's different sizing and there's all kinds of problems that come with that. And I haven't been very successful with it. So I just decided to do it separately and then make arrangements. And I did the same with this one. The leaf and the flower were shot separately. This was shot with a 35 millimeter because I wanted to get into the nitty gritty, and it's a 29 image stack. Pick it back up on it. I probably should have done more images, but you can get kind of tired of doing it after a while. Anyway, there was a lot of editing. There was random pollen, and there were some blurry anthers. You can use a healing brush to fix those blurry parts, or use one of the source images and paint back in the sharpness the program might have missed. I just love the color of this. I call it Master of Her Universe because I think it looks really celestial. This is an example of actually shooting 3 flowers in a row. So this was all done at once. They were all about the same size, and I had them exactly in a line. So I didn't have to worry about having to shoot too far beyond some of the other ones. It was a 43 image stack. I added a mountain background in it on one, and then these turned out with hardly any flaws, like almost none. I call this Fierce. I shot this tulip on a gray background because I knew I wanted to try different colors and textures in Photoshop. I just couldn't decide which one of my backgrounds to use. And then I thought I'll just wing it later. And it ended up turning pretty great. I used a ring light for this. So the water drops all have little circles in them. And they all kind of look like, if you look really close, they all kind of look like octopus tentacles. This is another flower I almost tossed because it was boring. But then I added background trees in the background, some vintage color, and it has kind of a dreamy mid-century feel to me. And so now I really love this flower. So it's, it doesn't really pay to throw things out. You can fix them sometimes. Anyway, I don't usually shoot really busy subjects. There's too many leaves, there's thorns in here, and the chances of it not working are pretty high. But for some reason, this one did work. I don't know if maybe I pulled the leaves off the very back of it, so I didn't have to go all the way back. And maybe it was narrow enough, but it did work. And it was 63 images. This is really fun. It's a Christmas light wire, which attracts water really well. So I used a syringe to add those really big drops. There's a cloth coaster behind it in the background. If your intention is to show what's in the background into your water drops, like this coaster, you need to have a light source coming from the back, either on the right or the left, but not directly into your camera. And then, as you could see, the coaster in these drops is sharp in every single one. So I was pretty proud of this one. Here's a really pretty tulip I did. And then sometimes when I'm looking around my table, I see interesting things. And there was this beautiful leaf that had dried in a circle. And it was able to take some really nice water. I put a fake flower behind it, and you can see the flower through the drops. So I found that really interesting. And you never know. You don't always have to shoot flowers. You can shoot leaves and stems too. This is a small weed flower that grows in the grass. It's super delicate, and it curled very quickly. So it was going downhill fast. I love how it turned out. It looks like it's just a small minimalistic thing. I started shooting dried flowers that I had laying around. There's a lot of texture here and fun color grading. This is from my old Is Beautiful project. And these were all shot separately. Here's a dahlia that had dried in this unusual shape. So I think this has kind of a modern contemporary look. Here's a peony, and daylight from the window coming from the left. And it just has this beautiful, gentle flow about it. And I feel like I could just reach in there and touch it. This, to me, has a lot of feeling in it. Here's another peony with a nice contemporary feel. Peonies are great to shoot because they have really large petals and the leaves dry in unique shapes. This sunflower I made to be fun and playful with color grading and added textures. Here's another dahlia. This is a zinnia, and it looks like she's having fun at a party. I shot these separately and arranged them together. I wanted to go for something that was dark and contemporary.
Dawn, you have 5 minutes.
Oh, yes, I do. I'm almost there, actually. Okay. This rose stands on its own in a plain black background. It's just really beautiful. A really dark trio I put together with a night sky background. So it's all about playing and finding things that work and suit your mood at the time. This is a flowery maple I got at farmer's market. It bloomed all summer. And here it is dried. I started playing with paper strips for a background. Here is a bee balm. Last summer I grew giant sunflowers. This was shot not using macro or focus stacking. It's so large you didn't need to go macro. It's a little bit blurry in the background, but I think it would be too busy if the whole thing was in focus. It's really nice to not have to work so hard at your images. So shooting regular is awesome. And then here's another one that I did that with. The secondary stem is slightly out of focus, but I love the simplicity. And finally, I found a jumping spider on my rain barrel, took hundreds of handheld pictures to get one of his face in focus. He was really pissed at me by the time I was done. But now we can open it up to questions and comments.
Well, Dawn, that was fabulous. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I did it. I got through it.
Are there any questions or comments?
I have a comment. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Kathleen.
Well, I thank you. I loved your work, every stage you went through. And I wrote down, you quoted, "You can't be great at something if you're doing everything." And I love the way you just put everything into what you're doing. Whether it was the senior photos that you enjoyed taking, or the flower images are just gorgeous. And the tenacity you put into each image just pays off. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's really fun to do. And I think it's important to really be good at what you're doing and learn everything that you can. So it just opens up the variety of choices that I make when I'm doing this type of photography.
Other questions or comments?
I do have
I
a
have a
question.
comment. I have a
Oh, go ahead.
comment. Donna, I'm a great fan of Blur. I love Blur. I use it a lot. You have made me appreciate focus stacking in a way that I never have. Those were just spectacular. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And you know what? I do like blurry images. There are some really beautiful macro photography out there that are blurred and they're fantastic. So, you know, I'm not against it. It's just that I have this need in me to make my pictures perfect. That's tough. It's really tough.
I have a question. When you physically move the camera, doesn't that change the size of the thing that you're taking a picture of?
Yes, it does. So the closer you get, then the bigger it gets toward the camera. That's why I use subjects that are not that deep. If it was too deep, it wouldn't focus stack very well. The program would still give it. It would be really blurry. So, you know, your front images would blur out even more if you had to go back further. So, it does change the size of it, but it still works as long as you keep within the parameters. So I don't handhold and focus stack. Someone asked me that and I go, I don't know, can you do that? But actually you do, you just get closer to it, but there's no way you can move and be straight and go 1 millimeter at a time.
Do you ever use
question?
do you ever use the focus stacking features within cameras?
The Leica does not do that. Yeah. I have a Hasselblad that does do that, and I attempted it a couple times, but I don't have a macro adapter or anything yet, so I'm gonna wait until I try to get more, get another lens for that camera so I can actually try doing it within the camera. But I still think doing it my way is going to be more precise than, because it didn't work out very well when I tried it. I just didn't. I see that there's a learning curve there. I mean, do you find that? Do you try that?
I've done it because I'm very impatient and don't have your commitment. So I do it mostly handheld. And then I'll do it with the various features within the camera that I tend to do focus stacking on landscapes rather than
Right.
petals.
Yes. And that's
So
a lot easier to do in camera. You know, when you're not focus stacking 100 images 1 millimeter at a time, because you don't do that in landscape. You do your foreground, your middle, and your back. So yeah, it's a really nice feature, but Leica does not have that.
thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, Don, I really, really like the elegance of some of those flowers. Like they were just gorgeous. And I was wondering, how do you choose your background, especially the color? What's your thought process of choosing the backgrounds?
Well, I have a whole stock of them and I just put them up against my flower and to see the one that strikes me. If none of them strike me, that's when I use a gray background and I go into Photoshop and I think, what are my complementary colors and how is this, do I want it to feel? Do I want to feel industrial? Do I want to feel romantic or do I want to and so I start throwing them in there until it works. So a lot of times I spend a lot of time just playing. But I do make conscious decisions when I pick those color ones because I want them to be complementary or I want them to be more monochrome or whatever. It just depends on what just like if I want to do the water drops and show refraction, then I'm going to pick something that's going to be half one color and half another.
Well, thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Dawn. That was really inspiring and beautiful work. Thank you.
Thank you.
And next up, we have Mike Osborne. Mike, are you here? And do you want to unmute?
I am here. And I'm going to do something I've never done before tonight. I'm going to show you pictures that are not subject related, not subject matter, not location, not color, but they're from a specific period of time. And because I'm the sort of guy that always looks for somebody to blame in case things don't go well, I'm going to blame Pete Gomina for this because, yeah, that's right, Pete. During the last print share that we had, he talked about having a lot of fun playing around with digital capture. And that got me to thinking about when I made the transition from slide film to digital camera. And so I wanted to, it made me wonder about the pictures that I took during that mogrification of my life from slides to digital. And I wondered, well, what could I have said about my pictures during that time frame? So I went back to my Lightroom catalog and I pulled out everything from summer of 2010 through 2011. So that's an 18-month period of images, and I've been kind of working those over and thinking about them. And what I wondered, did it not only what it changed about the pictures I was taking, but did it send me off in different directions? Did it change my vision in any way? Did I had I become a different kind of photographer? And so let's see, whoops, how do I make this go away now? Do I click share?
Yeah, so in the middle in the bottom screen share is green. Yeah.
There. Okay.
And then it should give you a choice of which one you want to share, and then just hit share. Okay, and then we are seeing it start. They're perfect. We see your Lightroom catalog. Yes.
So I imagine that you guys all anybody that changed from analog to digital went through some of the same kinds of things as I did. I learned that to love histograms and the ease of making exposures. I love the ability to take more pictures that had a wider dynamic range than film did. Even though I was just learning the local and global adjustment parameters, I could tell that my pictures were the the images were actually better than the slide images had been, even right at the first. I love the ability to change my ISO a frame at a time, and what that helped me do with water. Moving water, and especially the texture of moving water, is really important to me. And the shutter speed is really the critical element of saying what you want the water to say. I learned and made my first conversions to black and white photography during that time. Not only black and white, but also high key and low key. And then I also found the stuff that everybody always finds. It's easier to locate and arrange images. And then only lately have I discovered the joy of printing, which was something that was completely foreign to my 40 years as a slide photographer. There were some disadvantages too. The one that I felt most dearly was the death of the slideshow. So here we go. We're going to get lost in 2010. You're going to see what my world was like in 2010. All these pictures are from Yosemite National Park, except for the first group, which is just outside the park and along the Merced River Canyon. The rest are all inside the park. And I'm going to do it as a slideshow, because otherwise I'd get stuck and we'd be here till the cows came home. This is the river just outside the park. The house I lived in during this period was in the green hillside up in the top. And this river is just an incredible resource. Here was one of the shorter exposures that I've used in a long time. It's also fun to have to balance the rate of falling snow with the texture of the water. But digital helps you do that. When you're down in the bottom of a big hole like this, it unleashes the possibility of tremendous reflections. The sun gets to be higher in the sky while the river is still in the shade, and it just unleashes incredible colors and reflections. This is a willow getting tossed about in the current during high water. There are several places in the canyon where there are giant old fig trees that must have been from somebody's picnic once upon a time, because they were in places where nobody would have planted them. This was a lot like the pictures I used to take with slides. I found shutter speeds that give that really nice flowing water texture, like in just going over the ridges in this one. Now, the next shot was the same exposure with a much longer exposure, like 4 seconds. And it gives an entirely different feel to the color and the flow of the river. Another thing that I really liked about the Merced River Canyon was there are stretches of it where the predominant rock is not granite, but this older metamorphic rock. This is rock that was formed in sedimentary layers off the coast and then drug under the Sierra by the conveyor belt of the Pacific plate and pushed upward under the Sierra. And it makes really interesting contrast with the textures in the river. In this one, it kind of echoes the lines in the rocks to me. And this may be my favorite rock in the canyon. It was located down a steep bank on the same side as the road, and it took me years before I found that. And this is the same rock. When they blasted through this metamorphic rock, it fractured it and let water leak all the way through it and stain the cliff face in many places with just gorgeous colors. And then the water fell out of the cliff and dropped on the rocks below, and just did all of these astronomical kinds of pictures. The canyon is also a great place for trees. I call this one the Buddha tree because it's been sitting forever on the bank there, searching for enlightenment. One of my favorite environmentalists said there's many ways to find salvation, but one of the surest is along a river. Somebody even more colorblind than me called this a redbud. People really don't know about this canyon because they're hell-bent for leather to get to Yosemite, and they're hell-bent to leather to get home. And they never stop to really notice everything that's in this place. This is a California valley oak, excuse me, which is having a big trouble in California. They've been cut down, and they're just not nearly as many. But there's a few places where the canyon widens out and has formed a great habitat for these magnificent trees. A valley oak and a buckeye, and buckeyes have the most glorious wood. They form burls at their base, and it's just gorgeous wood. This is a bull pine, also called a gray pine, dancing in the fog. This pine tree is airier than the other pine trees, and they kind of look like wraiths going up the hill. The canyon's also a marvelous place for flowers. There's incredible flower displays there with just a little luck from the water year. This is one of my favorites. It's a blazing star. And unlike Dawn, I can live with a little blurriness there. One of the benefits of digital, I found, was that you can desaturate all the colors. So I desaturated the yellow, and look what it did to the orange center of that flower. Makes me wonder what bugs that see in ultraviolet see. And this was is a California fuchsia. It's the last flower to bloom in the canyon in September, but it's there when the hummingbirds migrate through. They love it. Well, most of you know I'm really enamored with shapes, lines and circles with lines. More lines and circles. More lines and circles. This was an old fence that the last cattle guy in the canyon would collect his cattle in. This is a roadside guardrail in the frost, but circles and lines and leaf shapes, oh my. Now we're kind of getting into some of the stuff that I've been showing you lately. My fascination with junk and rust and old things like these old machinery left at abandoned mines. I took this one because although photographers take pictures of light, if it's a real thing, it's all right to go ahead and just take it. You might want to think that this is the Jovian moon Callisto, but it's not. It's a disintegrating gear shift knob on an old bulldozer. So now we're going to walk around in the high country a bit, day hiking off the Tioga Pass Road. This is Tuolumne Meadows. It's the largest meadow, alpine meadow in the Sierra. Another fascination of mine is trees, and I love old and dying, dead and dying trees. They have such dignity. Cathedral Peak and the melting ice on Gaylor Lake. And melting ice off the lakes can do some really nice abstract patterns. This is one of my favorite places on the planet, I think. This is Tenai Lake off the Tioga Road. And I can't tell you how many wonderful hikes I've done out of that and how many neat pictures I've gotten out of that hole. And of course, I can never resist it if they throw a couple of triangles in the foreground for me. This was lines of pollen floating on the lake as the lake level went down towards the end of the summer and left a record of its going down. Oh, and this was a dike in granite, on glacial polished granite that I just loved. I've taken many pictures of that, and I've found one of that same dike that was taken by Ansel Adams. It's a little clue that sometimes you're doing something right. Texture of water. It's remarkable to me how well water echoes and tells you what the substrate that it's flowing over is like, gives you clues about it. This one is showing where all the limbs used to be on this log. Oh, buckle your seats. It's ice coming up here. When the nights get really cold in the high country, ice forms around the edge of the lake. and you can get some really interesting reflections from the sunrise on the mountain across from the lake. And as I said, this may have been one of my first ever black and white pictures. The ice that forms around the edge of a lake is this real feathery composition, and does really nice in black and white, I think. But it does well in color too. I don't know if I ever mentioned it, but when you're doing ice reflections, you should always check it out with your polarizer, because sometimes it just unleashes some of the prismatic effects. If you turn it too far, it'll just shut the reflections off, but at the right spot, it just lights up nice. This was an odd one. I've never seen this kind of thing before, and they were all over this lake. You can see sort of how I was developing a fascination for abstractions. Ice just really helped that along for me. And I couldn't resist the sun flash there. I love patterns, and ice just has all kinds of great patterns. But whenever you can get a pattern that has one thing different, it really helps that pattern. In this case, that one line that joins the other line kind of breaks the pattern. Plus, there's all sorts of other patterns in this particular piece of ice that I really like. This is kind of ghosty. That lace part was about 3 inches above the rest of the ice from when the ice formed lake earlier. And what I can most tell you about this one is it earned me a nickname in some quarters of the park of the old geezer, but you'll have to ask me about that at the Lucky Lab some night. Water texture and patterns. It was really cold for this, and there was ice all around this boulder. It sort of looked like one of the hippopotamuses from that Disney movie that was wearing a tutu. I've seen pictures of this helmet ice that Don Jacobson has shown us before, and it forms in one series of rapids in Yosemite Valley. Well, what can I say? I call this one the Ice Queen. You just can't make this stuff up. This one looks like galactic chaos. I have this little game that I do is I try to find as many angles in a picture as I can. I think I've gotten up to 8 or 9 before. And this ice, there's just no excuse for that, you know. Ice just is free to go off on its own tangent and do wonderful things. The creek had spread out over some slick rock, and there's this pattern of circular pressure fractures, which kind of go really nicely with the gold lines of the ice terraces. You know, it's really cold when you see ice like that. And that was right at the bottom of this frozen solid cascade. Now we're going to walk around in Yosemite Valley a little bit. I noticed in these pictures from Yosemite Valley, I was a lot on trees, and some of my favorite trees in the valley were taken during this time of playing with my new digital camera. I like this one because it kind of messes with your mind. If I can make you stop and say, wait, what? Then that picture has some appeal to me. Standing tall in front of El Cap. Radial lines make really interesting compositions as far as I'm concerned. This is a black oak. Yellow pines and dogwoods. The first snowfall of the fall is just a wonderful time. If you can ever get there for that, you're doing good. Took me years to notice this tree, and it's easily visible from the road. It was only when a sideways blowing snow entered it like that it caught my attention. And here's a high key version. I did a low key version too. Although that transition is a little disquieting, isn't it? I actually got a little bit dizzy the first time I watched it. More radial lines and high key. And I'm thankful for digital being to do some of this stuff.
Mike, you have about 5 minutes.
Okay, as I said, even trees appeal to me. Now we're getting into a series of flowing water where texture is a major part of the composition of these images. And it was really helped by being able to shift my ISO at will, not once every 36 pictures. I will tell you, this is one of only 2 pictures I've ever taken that I've actually pre-visualized. I saw that stump and I waited a couple of years before the water level was just right and the time of day was just right. And again, this picture is as much about the rocks under the water as it is about the rocks, the watering over the rocks. Change the ISO, let me bump my shutter speed to 160th to freeze the the text on this pattern of water. And this one I like because green is not associated with those trees at all. The trees were, green was on the canyon wall a third mile behind it. And this is one of my favorite weirdnesses in Yosemite Valley. This is a dike that when the rock that was in it fractured, it left a perfect 4-foot wide circle. Triangles and circles. Probably have 50 pictures of that. And speaking of circles, this is an oak gall. And the oak creates that structure to protect the larva of the wasp that stung the leaf. It's the most amazing natural history story I've ever heard in my life, but we'll save it for the Lucky Lab some night. And this one is a sad story. This one had the pattern of the fungus called the old man of the woods, and it was covered with these gorgeous little spider webs. And a drop of water hit my lens, and I leaned over to brush the water off my lens, and my hair, I had more in those days, brushed across and took all the, or almost all of the spider webs off that fungus. And that's not something that digital can fix. Okay, how do I? Bob, it's not letting me stop sharing.
There we go. Okay, I stopped it. Well, Mike, those were fabulous. I always enjoy your work. Such interesting compositions and beautiful colors always.
Mike, can I make a comment for you?
Yes, you may.
Seeing all these pictures together and the timeline and the life that you spent in Yosemite, it becomes pretty obvious that you're not a visitor or a stranger to the park, but I got more of a sense that you're a family member with all of these the surroundings that you were in. There was an intimacy to it, which really came through for me tonight. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you. That's really true. The pictures I took in my first 10 years there were not like that, you know. They were visitor pictures. Thanks, Dave.
I'd like to say something. Hi, I'm Kathleen. And
Hi, Kathleen.
I just, first of all of you that presented tonight has been such an inspiration. And I am just so glad that I tuned in. You're also unique, and in every one of your projects and work have just beautiful, very inspirational. And I thank all of you for sharing. It's been very, very enlightening for me. And I thank you.
Thank you, Kathleen. Other questions or comments?
I think it's great to be reminded of what it was like to go from film to digital, because we take digital so for granted now. So it's kind of fun to remember, you know, we could change our ISO. Wow. You shoot black and white and color at the same time.
It was quite an awakening for me, Mark.
I think it was for
I have not looked back.
That's good.
Mike, I have a question. Do you go out and shoot every day? Because that was quite a collection from 1 year.
It was fun, so it was in 1 year, but I went out a lot back then. While there was really very little what I shot during that period of time and the slides that the year before that, there has been a big shift in my work now. And it's not tied into digital at all. It's tied into moving from the Garden of Eden to the suburb. And it's also relates to a declining mobility issue. And I can't do that stuff anymore. But the real joy for digital for me has been when it closed that door, it opened another window. And that led me to taking pictures of the sides of cargo ships and junker cars and fixed up cars and other things that don't require the mobility that I used to have.
You know, Mike, that's one of the things that came to my mind about halfway through was I don't have too many regrets, or I don't dwell on getting old, except for the fact that I know that I'll never see a lot of that firsthand again. And never get the chance to take those pictures. And it's kind of tough.
But you know, digital allows you to make amends by going in different directions.
Mm-hmm.
And it may not be a direction you would have chosen 20 years ago, but hey, it keeps the wheels turning, you know?
I appreciate that in your work.
Thank you.
You illustrate that concept so well.
Thank you.
You know, Mike, Giannis, one of the things I appreciate about your work is, besides the poetry of the visual images, is like, especially of the Yosemite work, is like you have this incredible depth of knowledge of, you know, like of what you're photographing. And somehow to me, like that sings in your images, and it just really gives me joy and kind of almost makes me cry. Is like there's the poetry, and then somehow like visually I'm getting like knowledge that you instill in that image right when you're clicking that little shutter, whether it's digital or, you know, analog. So
You know,
thank you.
Knowledge of the subject, just like both Don and Mark showed before, whether it's flowers, whether it's cowboys, the more you know, the better pictures you can take of that subject.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments for Mike or for any of our other presenters?
Oz, it's Michael down in Bend, and I'd just like to say you make me cry a lot too, but it isn't always a good thing. This was fantastic. This was just marvelous. And to the whole group, I certainly hope that Oz's presentation is recorded and available in the future, because this is really a marvelous little bit of autobiography in Oz's journey as a photographer, from natural history and from landscaping into the pure abstract that he finds wherever he looks. And Oz doesn't talk much about it, but he has mentioned this transition a number of times to me in conversations, and never with this much depth, nor the visual presentation of how it occurred in the examples. This is a really, really, really great presentation, Oz, and thank you very much.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Michael was one of my buddies back in the day, so
not anymore. Just
he knows
was.
where all the bodies are buried, so don't talk to him.
And the meeting and the presentations will all be available on the PPF YouTube channel.
Wonderful.
Probably tomorrow or the day after.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thanks, Bob.
Any other questions or comments? Well, thanks everyone for coming tonight and for staying on the call. And we'll see you all next month, hopefully at the print share.
Will do.
Good night, everybody.
Good
Night.
night.
And thank
Good
you
night,
to all our
everybody.
presenters.